So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I'm delighted today to be able to sit down and have a chat with my favourite, everybody's favourite, I know everybody's favourite Peruvian man, and that's Luis Miguel Echegaray. Luis, absolutely delighted to have you back on. People, you may know him. You'll obviously know him from Twitter. If anybody has ever been on Twitter and typed in AVFC into Twitter, you've come across a tweet. But also from the Que Golazo podcast as well, which is a superb listen. If you guys aren't listening to that, you absolutely should, and I'm sure you absolutely are. But Luis, thank you so much for popping on.
Oh my God, thank you so much for once again that great intro. I feel like, again, I need to give you part of my agent's fees. You do it so well. But no, I appreciate it. Thanks. I'm so happy to be back. Always good to talk about the Villa.
Absolutely. And, always good to talk about the Villa when the Villa are doing good things as well. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So while we don't have any real massive transfer news at the moment, there is an awful lot of, as we would say here in Ireland, there's an awful lot of spuds boiling in the pot here at the moment. So, it's trying to find which rumor, I suppose, and which transfer piece is actually going to come true. But before we get into that, Luis Miguel, talk to me about your excitement about Aston Villa. It's been such a kind of I'm not even going to say a season of two halves, but it's been two very different emotional roller coasters, I think, so far this season. And how have you seen it? How have you seen it since the start of the season to now?
No, I think, honestly, calling it season of two halves is kind of a good way to describe it. I kind of see it as, a really good TV show, right? Where, like, the beginning is kind of setting you everything up for what's to come. And to your point, we began the season with Dean Smith and, things were not going well, et cetera, et cetera. But, our loyalty to a great man remained, but we were all worried. And then suddenly, Steven Gerrard, who really has just given this club not just a new focus, but this energy inside and outside of the pitch. I mean, listen, you can't blame Dean Smith for not being one of the greatest midfielders that's ever played the game, right? Which is something that comes with Steven Gerrard, and also being a young manager, impressive. The owners and coming in has really revitalized this team. But I think you've nailed it. It feels like another season ever since Steven Gerrard came in. Obviously, not just the results, which have been really commendable. We have seen some shades of not great performances, but the majority of what we've seen has been great. And then January has just been amazing. I mean, almost surreal. Philippe Coutinho is a villain. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So with him, Lucas Dean, and of course all the other reports that you're talking about, and I'm sure we'll get into it, has just been amazing. So everybody's just feeling so good, positive. It's great to be a villain.
Absolutely. And you actually touched on the first person I wanted to talk about, and that is Philippe Coutinho. Obviously, I'm sure more than most people in the UK and specifically here in Ireland, you would be interested in South American qualifications for World Cup. And I'm sure he's been tormentor in chief when it's come to Brazil versus, your beloved Peru. But I want to talk a small bit about him. And, obviously we've seen him only in a fleeting few minutes. Obviously his debut goal was exactly everything that we wanted and more. But the potential that this guy has, and it seems strange to say that about a 29-year-old, but the potential this guy has to really drive us on to the next level is huge. But talk to me a small bit about him, and I suppose any bits and pieces that you're looking to see him rekindle at his time at Aston Villa.
No, absolutely. Listen, I think you're right on the money. I think being 29 years old, it doesn't really mean anything these days, especially in the caliber of a player that he is. Look, I interviewed Philippe Coutinho back when I was with Sports Illustrated, now with CBS Sports. I interviewed him when he was with Bayern Munich. And one thing that I actually based the entire foundation of the article on this. And one thing that left me with me after talking to him was just how positive he is, how optimistic he is, and how sensitive he is. He's a sensitive player. He needs that attention. He needs that care, right? Because he's the kind of player that he doesn't, I said it in my article for CBS Sports once he signed with us, or in the process of it, he's the kind of player that doesn't need to be the main dish of a squad, but or the number one dish, but he needs to be, a very important part of the menu. And that's exactly, what's going on with Steven Gerrard. He knows that. He says in his own autobiography, when Luis Suarez was leaving for Barcelona, he said to Steven Gerrard, take care of Coutinho. He needs to have that kind of attention. And, they're very good friends, etc. And listen, from a footballing perspective, people, forget Villa fans, everybody, and obviously because I follow him as well, from a Brazilian perspective, South American perspective, the things that he has achieved already are remarkable. People forget he was the best player for Brazil in the World Cup in 2018 by far, right? An influential player with Coach Tite up to so late. He actually hasn't started for them since October 2020. It's just the abundance of talent with Brazil. But look, I mean, titles in, as the song that I just love so much says, titles in Spain and, with Bayern Munich, and now he's coming to the Villa. I think it's a massive move. But most importantly, out of everything else, he is a statement purchase. He is an acquisition saying that Aston Villa means business. Steven Gerrard wants world-class local youth talent, which is what we can see with Jacob Ramsey, etc., right? And players that understand the meaning of competition, both in the Premier League and in Europe. And that is Philippe Coutinho. And like you said, his, introduction in that ridiculous game against Manchester United, and then, getting his feet a little wetter in the Everton win as well, has been, just a little bit of a glimpse of what we're going to see. But it's a purchase of a statement. It's saying to the rest of the Premier League, this is not your Aston Villa from 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, 4 seasons ago, when we were like 15th in the championship. This is a team that's ready to return once again to glory.
That's a great point. That is an absolutely brilliant point. And I think another great point that you made as well there is that, he is only still getting his feet wet within this team. And I really should have done some research and seen, was he called up for the Brazilian squad for this international window?
He was called up. Yeah, he was called up, but he hasn't started for Brazil since October 2020.
Yes.
So it's going to be, now Brazil have already qualified to the World Cup. But they do have Vinicius Junior, Lucas Paqueta, Rafinha, like all these players. But I think Coutinho hopefully will get some minutes just because of the energy that he has revitalized himself with Aston Villa.
And that's a good point. Like, I think he's in a win-win situation. It would be great if he'd stayed around Bodymore Heath, be able to work with our coaching staff, maybe work with some of the players that are there, get a foothold, I suppose, within what the ethos of this team, of our team building, is going to be. But the fact that he's going to go out and be training with Brazil, hopefully he gets some games. Hopefully he stays fit and he doesn't get injured. That is a big thing. Also, I suppose you have to be kind of, and I know he's just coming back from COVID, but you have to be kind of weary with people traveling around the world, the potential to test positive and so on. But no, he would be someone I'll be looking out to see if he does play in this international window for sure. And he's somebody that we potentially have quite a lot of eyes on the South American teams, should I say, over this window, because I suppose looking forward to somebody that we are being very, very heavily linked with, and that is Rodrigo Bentancur from Juventus. Obviously, the Uruguayan international, 24 years of age, almost 50 caps for Uruguay. Like, that's a fantastic tally at such a young age. I've done a piece in him very much from a statistical point of view. I watched 6 of his games to get a better feeling for him, inside out. And I personally am pretty high in him, but I want to get your feeling on him and see how you feel about the Uruguayan 6 or 8, depending on where you think you might be able to play.
Well, listen, the answer lies within in part of what you just mentioned there. I think anybody that doesn't know Rodrigo Bentancur's game, and I'm not just talking about Juventus, I'm mainly talking about Uruguay. And as you mentioned, 24 years old, 50 caps. I mean, that's, we have to remember a few things, okay? Number one, 24, like you said. Number two, he comes from the school of Boca Juniors Academy, okay? That completely made him into the player that he is. He is an 8/attacking 6, somebody that can also be a sort of, Paul Pogba in many ways. I'm not comparing him to him. I'm just saying in the way that he can go up and link up with the strikers, break the lines, but at the same time, does a lot of work when it comes to covering the middle of the park as well as being a hard tackler. Okay, that was all trained at Boca Juniors. To your point about 50 appearances for Uruguay, okay, he's not the manager anymore, but El Maestro Oscar Tavares, who was there forever, he revolutionized men's soccer in Uruguay. He completely revolutionized it. Okay, and so he knows the system, the national team setup, all the way from your 3-year-olds to your senior team. That garra charrua, that sort of Uruguayan, will to fight for anything. And Tavares knows Bentancur very, very well. And he wanted to take his time with Bentancur, ever since he was with the under-20s, and even before that. He was even quoted into saying, just before he was called up in 2017, at only 20 years old, Tavares said, look, I want to take my time with him, just like I took my time with Luis Suarez and just like I took my time with Edison Cavani. So he it's not an easy thing to be a 20-year-old and be called up by somebody like Oscar Tavares, who really demands a lot of excellence, but the most important thing, a lot of fight. And that's what Bentancur has. Obviously, the judgment on Bentancur is split between Juventus fans, but I think it's more to do with the system and the inconsistency of Juventus within itself. I think he is. If it happens, I will be very happy, because I think he's the perfect type of player for Steven Gerrard, because Steven Gerrard, above anything, demands, 100% focus, determination, and in his case, to really cover a lot of ground. And I think a player like that can facilitate John McGinn's productivity, because then, Bentancur can really cover ground, able to, pass and move, etc. But now he's doing kind of the dirty work and John McGinn can focus a little bit more on being sort of, part of that, trio in front of him going up front. I think 24 years old, man, like he's played, he's been at the World Cup. Like, he knows exactly what is required of him. It would be a very, very good acquisition, I think.
Just a small piece that just popped into my mind there. Is it typical for a Uruguayan player to maybe start off their career at Boca Juniors? Because Uruguay have such teams like the Nubo, Penarol, and teams like that, and you usually tend to see that they make their breakthrough for these teams. But I suppose I'm just really kind of drawing upon your South American kind of expertise here. Would it be normal for Boca Juniors to kind of have such trust in young players from around South America like that?
Well, yes and no. I mean, first of all, Uruguay and Argentina have a similar youth philosophies. So, it would suit him better. But, he came at Boca very, very early, right? So that's part of the reason why it happened. And the cultural shift is really not really a problem for somebody like Rodrigo Bentancur. But it does happen, specifically within South America, of course. And like I said, like the Uruguayan way of thinking is similar to the Argentinian, definitely in culture, definitely in the way they play their game and they train their development. So it does happen a lot, and Bentancur just happens to be, a very good example of that. And by the way, also because he was so highly sought by the national team setup, it was not going to be a difficult, situation for anybody involved to try and get his services. He's listen, the most important thing for Bentancur when it comes to, and I keep going back to, because I said it on Twitter, it's like when you make the decision and judgment and doing your analysis on Bentancur, obviously do what you've seen from him in Juventus, but really take more into consideration what he does with his South American Uruguayan national team setup. That's really where you're going to see more of a similarity of what Gerrard wants, I think, just because of what we like to do in that middle, right? With Jacob Ramsey, McGinn, and then, Douglas Luiz currently covering at DM. And I think Bentancur can fit perfectly right there.
Yeah, as I said, I watched a couple of games of his, and it's interesting. You mentioned to watch him in an international game and the difference in the style of play. And I actually haven't, and I'm now going to go back and I'm going to see if I can find footage of him so that I can do that, because a lot I've seen in Juventus is him being moved from pillar to post, played between two positions, sometimes in games being switched from 6 to 8 back to 6 to try and plug holes essentially, and then the fans getting on his back, and then he's not the type of, like, when you think about bring out the best in our players, and you mentioned about John McGinn runs everywhere at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Rodrigo Bentancur doesn't. He runs everywhere at 70, 80 miles an hour, and he's a languid, kind of relaxed style. And when you mentioned Paul Pogba, I smiled, not because I knew that you weren't comparing him to him, but he's got that long, kind of rangy way about him. He moves, he glides, and he moves as opposed to looking like he's, being really, really energetic.
And he can dictate play as well.
That's it.
So when you look at the analysis from before, I think I would recommend that people look at some of the highlights in the previous Copa America, where, there's a lot of footage there that you can see just the kind of work that he could do for Aston Villa, for sure.
That's true. Yeah. And obviously, look, I don't want to stereotype any nation, but Uruguayans are very, very dogged. They're very, very hardworking.
Oh no, it's
with
not
regards
even a stereotype, man. It's literally their thing. Garra charrua, which basically is the Uruguayan way of like, no, listen, if there's a 50-50 ball, I am dying for this ball, and that's Uruguay. They will not stop, and that's Bentancur, and that's going back to my original point. That's the kind of thing that Steven Gerrard would absolutely love, I think.
And notice the way I was going to try and pronounce that word, but I didn't, and I'm so glad I didn't, and I'm so glad you did. So that's why I hesitated when I was talking about that doggedness that Uruguayans are famous for. But Bentancur, obviously, when he's somebody who comes in. And if he does come into the club, we're going to have a nice stable of midfielders. But today there was some kind of murmurings and discussions that maybe Douglas Luiz could be on the trading block at the moment. There's Liverpool were just recently linked. Newcastle, Arsenal have been linked previously with Douglas Luiz, and I don't know. I genuinely don't know where I come down on this. Immediately when I saw it, I thought, "Ooh, that doesn't seem right. That seems like paper talk." But then I started thinking, I was going, maybe we are going to have to recoup money somewhere after spending this summer. But I don't want to lose Douglas Luiz because I think he would play better as an 8 if we bring in Bentancur as a 6.
Yeah.
But do we become too bloated in midfield? And I suppose the question I'm asking you here, Luis Miguel, is: does this one potentially have legs that he might move?
Well, there is definitely interest. I can tell you right now. Arsenal are definitely interested. The other clubs, I wouldn't be surprised if not. So, it's more about, there's a list that certain clubs are paying attention to, and Douglas Luiz seems to be part of many clubs and what they need for the summer. I really don't. Nothing I think is going to happen, obviously, in January, because the whole point as well from Aston Villa's perspective is like, we're not a selling club. Not anymore. We're here to build on our squad and fight competitively for positions and then see what happens. So the summer would be maybe a situation when it happens. And to your point, we're overloading that midfield number, especially we don't even know what's going to happen with Carney and stuff. So, there's a lot that has to be done, specifically once we hit May, June, etc. Now, in terms of Douglas Luiz as a player, I think we need to go back a little bit and remember that the year COVID hit and the league returned, that tough year for Villa, he was instrumental when we came back to play, like absolutely instrumental. And he's had to do a lot of things that are out of his natural, likes. Like to your point, he's not your prototypical defensive midfielder. He's somebody that likes to go a little bit higher in the pitch and move the chains and stuff. Technically gifted, one of the most technically gifted players that Villa has, I think. And very young still as well. And remember, we got him from Man City. Like, their academy is just spoiled with choice that, we got him pretty early on. So, and it's because of like his minutes and his time with Aston Villa that, again, Brazil kept calling up as well. He's not part of this one, but, definitely during the window and the campaign to make it to Qatar 2022. So there's a lot of good things there. And now that, he knows the Premier League really well, etc., it's no surprise that many teams are coming in. Now, the second part of that, I am conflicted whether I want him to leave or not. Partly because I think that once our midfield is completely set, we have the competition, we have that depth, and he is able to play in the places where he wants to play, then I think we will see an even better version of Douglas Luiz, because at the moment, obviously, he has to make up for a lot of what's going on with Marvelous Nakambas' injury and stuff. But once we have a complete squad, I think, obviously he would be just fantastic and be an added, help when it comes to attacking in the midfield. And we've seen it already. He's been a great servant to the club. However, to your point, if we need to make some kind of money, he's the kind of player where I would say, listen, if he has to leave, I wish him all the best. And as long as we make some good money from it and make up for what we want to achieve later on as well, it will help out. Because I'm telling you now, Rodrigo Bentancur, Lucas Dean, Philippe Coutinho, another center back coming in, the summer is going to be yet more look at where we're looking to purchase as well. So it's all about this. If he leaves, I wish him all the best in the summer, etc. Let's make sure that whoever's coming in is an addition that either replicates what he can offer or even improve it. And I think that's going to happen. I have my full trust in Johan Lang and Steven Gerrard and Perslow, because right now, why wouldn't we have trust? I mean, look what we did. Lucas Dean for an absolute bargain. Philippe Coutinho, all these loans that are coming out now that are going to benefit our youth academy products. So all these things that are coming in right now, so far, so good. So let's keep trusting the process, with a lack of a better phrase.
I have another player's name written down on my podcast sheet here. I don't know whether I want to, Luis. Well, the reason being is because if I mention his name, there'll be about 45,000 comments saying that people don't want him to join us.
Right? So you might as well.
No, and I can completely understand because of past transgressions, but we have been linked with another Uruguayan player.
Yeah.
In the not so distant past.
I know where you're going with this.
A man that's not going to sign a new contract with Atletico Madrid. And in one sentence or less, I think, Luis Miguel, what would be your feelings on Mr. Suarez that you mentioned, who asked Liverpool to take care of Coutinho? And that's why I popped his name. I wrote it down mid-podcast to see, and I said, I don't know what I ask about him. But
you might as well. I mean, it's out there, right? It's no secret. Listen, okay, I would be extremely conflicted about it, but let's add some context here. I don't think it's a surprise at all that Luis Suarez is just thinking about his future. Okay. He's not a young buck anymore. He's got to think about his family, his own, situation. He's achieved almost everything he has in his career. I'm sure he has, thoughts of, could I, it's two roads for him, right? Do I give it one more year to try and win some more silverware in Europe, or, definitely will be getting some offers from MLS as well. And that's always appealing to a South American or a player that's played in Europe their whole life and then thinking about, doing a different type of journey. Look at Lorenzo Insigne, of course, going to Toronto from Napoli. So there's that situation. So there's that. The other part is, like, again, don't be surprised because, again, Steven Gerrard and Luis Suarez are very good friends. Of course, it would be something that would interest him. But I think from the other side, the reason why I'm conflicted is because I want us to think about the striker position, the center forward position, as not a Band-Aid over a gunshot wound, meaning that we just try and get an older player and see if they can help us for a year, but somebody that's, 25, 26, maybe a little younger, who is now very, very ambitious, has a lot of perseverance and talent, and can help us for not just 1 year, but 3 or 4. That's what I'm hoping for. So, I'm thinking about Gio Simeone, maybe Diego Simeone's son, who's killing it in Serie A. Players like that are just beginning that career, and we're getting them at the right moment, because those are the jewels that can help us. Having said that, I understand that there would be an interest, because I think there's a perfect balance in the squad, which includes 3 things that are fundamental. One is, developing your youth and talent in your own academy. We're doing that already. Okay. 2, players that know the Premier League really well. Doesn't matter if they're, internationals or born in England. We're doing that. And 3, players that have been there, that have done it, that understand what it takes to win the biggest, highest of the peaks. And again, we're doing that as well. Philippe Coutinho, etc. And Emiliano Martinez, of course, who just won Copa America with Argentina this past summer. So we have those 3 things. So Luis Suarez would fit in one of them. It's just that I also don't like the idea of us becoming like this retro Liverpool side. Like I want us to kind of become, something more. And the center forward position is one that I really want us to think very carefully about, because look at Ollie Watkins, right? That's we can do that again. It doesn't have to be an English born, but it can be, I mentioned Simeone, of course, but there's so much more talent all over the world that I think that we could really price ourselves in getting something big. So, it depends on many factors. I'm conflicted about it, but again, I trust Johan Lang and Steven Gerrard. I just want to make sure that we have that right balance of, local youth product, Jacob Ramsey, players that know the Premier League, etc. That's all over our team, and of course, world-class talent like Coutinho, etc.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the Luis Suarez thing. That look, whatever anybody thinks about him, from that point of view, if the club gets him, they're better. Like they better be able to show the I suppose the roadmap of, number one, how they're going to use them, and then also how they're also going to look into the future towards that position too as well. Like, you mentioned a couple of players there in Europe. I'd be absolutely thrilled. And I'm going to mention this because I'm going to say that I spoke Rodrigo Bentancur into existence by mentioning him as a throwaway name in a podcast I did previously about 4 weeks ago. But if we were to take Luka Jovic from Real Madrid and do a reclamation project on him, I'd be absolutely delighted with that too. If he is reclaimable. I met
him as well. I did an interview with him as well with Sports Illustrated as well. Very focused young man, obviously very ambitious. Things didn't go well at the very beginning of his career with Real Madrid, but you can't deny the talent. I mean, he's so great. So exactly, I'm looking for players like that, I think, that can help us.
Absolutely. Look, either way, we're mentioning names here that would have been pipe dreams.
Yeah, keep them coming, man. I love to talk about the Villa. My wife doesn't let me talk about the Villa at home, so I might as well just do it right now.
I'm exactly the same. Well, I don't have any more names on my list. I'm sure.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I will say this, okay? I think the way that we're doing the January transfer window right now is excellent, okay? We're covering bases that we needed. And by the way, forgetting about Leon Bailey's return as well, that's going to be a nice headache for Steven Gerrard, But, a defensive midfielder, a center back, because of Axel Tuansuebe's exit, they're key. Defensive midfielder-wise, I've been talking about this for 3.5 years, and I'm glad I have another megaphone on your podcast to say it again. And I'm Peruvian, but Renato Tapia is somebody that I really want us to get in the summer, if it can be in January, which I don't think it will happen. Celta Vigo, he's the future captain of Peru. If you're watching any World Cup qualifiers and you're watching Peru, Colombia on Friday, please just focus on Renato Tapia. He is literally what we need, the epitome of a defensive midfielder that does it all. And he's young, he's ambitious, he's smart, and he's Peruvian, so there's another advantage there. So that's somebody that I hope we can get. But we need a defensive midfielder. The great Greg Evans said it already, that there's a focus on that, and we need a center back. So if we can get that in January, listen, I know that top half of the table is the realistic goal for everybody, but why not Europe? Let's just go for it. Let's see what can happen. Obviously, it's not going to be easy, but if we try and, achieve that, maybe not, it can happen. But there's no shame in having high ambitions. That's if Steven Gerrard can teach you anything, it's that. So hopefully we can do it. But that's a player that I hope that we can focus on. But a DM and a center back, an absolute must.
Absolutely. And you know what? You've got me all riled up with positivity now as we come to the end of the podcast, because as the saying goes, if you reach for the stars, at least you'll fall in the clouds, That's my corny saying for this podcast.
It's beautiful. And when it's done with an Irish accent, it's even better. That's great. I love it.
Absolutely excellent. Well, Luis Miguel, thank you so much for popping on. It's always a pleasure and an honor to talk to you. If anybody isn't, look, I feel patronizing doing this, and I think I said it to you the last time. If anybody isn't following Luis Miguel, please catch him on Twitter.
It's fine. Many people don't follow me. It's okay.
They should. They should follow you. They absolutely should follow you. And that's what this is about. And also, I meant it when I said it at the start, the Que Golazzo podcast. Check it out. It's really, really good, and you'd expect nothing, nonetheless from Luis Miguel as well. And there's a lot of familiar faces on that you might see from other parts as well on that podcast. So check it out. No spoilers. Oh,
I really appreciate it, Neil. Thank you so much, buddy.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do for today, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. If you just could give this a little thumbs up thingy on YouTube. I'd really, really appreciate it. We're going to be back with loads more transfer talk. Paddy is not gone. Do not adjust your sets. Paddy is not gone. He will be back soon. Just has some more commitments at the moment. And if anything breaks with the Rodrigo Bentancur piece or the Douglas Luiz piece or any other name that's yet to break, we will be back and we will cover that with you as well. So once again, thank you so much to Luis Miguel. Thank you so much to the rest of you, to everybody out there for watching and for listening. And all that's left to say is up the Villa.
Up the Villa!